Welcome to Toxicology, brought to you by Recovery Unplugged, the place where we talk about all things substance abuse, recovery, and mental health, with guests offering varying perspectives and viewpoints. Hosts Joseph Gordo and Jason Cabello share about their addiction and recovery and other serious subject matter through lighthearted yet candid conversation.
1, 2, 3, shoot.
Intro.
Hey, and welcome to Toxicology, the latest and greatest podcast about mental health, addiction, and recovery in the known universe. Question: what is more terrifying to you, Jason? Is it the idea that the universe is infinite and has no end, or the idea that the universe does have an end?
That it has an end.
And there's something else.
That it has an end.
Yeah?
Yeah. Because I'm comfortable with things that I can't grasp.
Yeah.
I'm comfortable with, and that's a big part of my recovery was just like,
Really?
I don't know what makes it work, and I'm cool with that. I'm cool with like my higher power being a mystery and all that shit because it takes a lot of the weight off of me.
Yeah.
It's like, it's just there. It's infinite. But
Don't
if
worry
there is
about
a fucking end, like, where is it?
Yeah.
What's on the other side? What happens if I cross over? Who knows?
Is there oxygen out there?
Yeah, I mean, the earth is flat. What happens if I tip over, fall off, tumble off to the end? That's scary.
Yeah. I'm sorry to our viewers. My name is Joseph Gordo. I'm the executive director of Recovery Unplugged in Austin and a licensed chemical dependency counselor.
And I hold cameras. My name's Jason.
Yeah, Jason's a beautiful, beautiful man.
But we haven't seen each other in a bit, so this is why we're just kind of, and we usually show up a little bit early, and we didn't. We just kind of sat down, got into it. We haven't seen each other in a couple weeks, so it's nice to see you.
I forget how pretty you are.
Keep going.
Jason, you just got back from Canada.
I did. They let me in. Remember a couple weeks ago, I was petrified they weren't going to let me in because I have a checkered past. There's a lot of people that we know in the recovery world do. I wasn't always the stand-up guy who had a sweater and, big shot.
Yeah. Luckily, Canada's okay with people with checkered pasts, just not chest pasts.
That was really good. That was
You
awesome.
like that?
Yeah. But
wait, hold on.
Okay.
Before you tell us how great it was, I just want to emphasize how cool it is that you, as a person who is a recovered alcoholic drug addict who has a checkered past, not only could afford to go to Canada, but could get legal clearance to go to Canada.
Yeah.
And you didn't have to worry about stuff like, will I get enough? Do I have enough drugs to take with me? Will I get stopped at customs? Like the ability to move about as a free man without that concern, like that's huge.
That is huge. And also, like, I know when we're in 12-step meetings, we talk about, the things aren't important, the job, the money, this and that, but it makes traveling a lot easier when you have a couple of bucks. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
When you're not worried about, you could go to a restaurant and just be like, we're going to go eat at nice restaurants while we're here and just worry,
What's the best thing on the menu? Just bring it to me.
Yeah, we had some great food when we were out there. So we get
poutine.
Yeah. We did. We found a place that had vegetarian gravy, poutine.
No, you didn't.
We'll edit that out. Poutine.
Yeah.
And vegetarian gravy, and it was the last thing that we ate when we were there.
Yeah.
And I'm glad it was the last thing because I would have had it every fucking day.
You just crossed the border still tasting it.
Yeah, smuggled it. That's where they would have stopped me over from smuggling over vegetarian gravy and cheese curds.
It has 30 gallons of vegetarian gravy.
So we get to Canada, we get to customs, and of course, I still have that. If there's a cop behind me, I'm still sweating.
Yeah.
Even though I'm clear and free to go, and usually because I've been pulled over and I'm nervous, but I'm pretty good with like bullshitting with people. So usually when the cop gets to me, by that point I'll
Got your story straight?
I'll check the room and see what the temperature is, and then if a little bit of sense of humor in there, I'm like, I know I got him. Like I'm cool with this guy, but guy at customs agent, no sense of humor, had a mask on, so I couldn't see anything. He's just like, "Why are you guys here?" Looking at us, and then I'm thinking, looking at the passport. I know that we've touched on the subject, but we haven't gone into it. Like, there's a 25-year gap between me and my girlfriend.
Yeah.
I'm 25 years older.
Yes.
So that's a questionable thing right there. And so she surprises me with all these things that we're doing. And he looks at me, he's like, what are you guys doing when you're here? And I'm just like, I don't know. And then and the only thing that I knew that we were doing is Gabby got tickets to a secret concert.
Yeah.
So we got a concert ticket to somebody who we don't know who we're seeing. So he's like, going to a concert. Who are you going to see? I don't know. And then we're both just sitting there like crickets in the background. And then Gabby had to spoil one of the secrets and goes, we're going to Whistler. And I genuinely looked over and like, we're going to Whistler. And the guy at that point knew like we were a couple and we were going somewhere because he was like, oh, was it a surprise? And so
thanks, Canada. Was he on a horse with the red thing and the big hat?
Yeah, this is exactly like you would think of. He was a member of Kids in the Hall. He was on Degrassi.
Yeah,
Degrassi
with Drake.
High. Yeah, both. He was a student in the first one, a teacher in the second one, because they're all related. And he's a member of Arcade Fire.
Wow, I hate Arcade Fire.
Really?
I hate him.
I do too. Not musically. I will.
Both. For
one
me.
more thing. So I was listening to a podcast that they were on, and they asked, they have a kid, and like, what kind of music does the kid listen to? And I forget the singer's name. Rhett or
Douchey McDouchester.
So he's like, oh, he likes the Beastie Boys, and his partner's like, no, he likes free jazz. And I'm like, I'm gonna believe that he likes the Beastie Boys, but anyway. So how's it? So yeah, my vacation was great. In closing, my vacation was great.
Lovely. We'll talk more off camera.
Let's talk about your political.
I don't want to do that. I mean, okay. I lost the election.
I know. Joseph called me and said, "You have to find me more votes."
Yeah.
We have to storm.
All we need to do is just find me 11,000.
We have to storm the building. I'm like, what building? I can't find you votes. I'm just a video guy.
We have to storm the school district offices. But no, I lost by about 900 votes.
Okay.
It was, what's weird? I have like imposter syndrome, like that father wound, like I have to achieve to be valid and worthy kind of thing, right?
Okay.
I think we all know this. But like, I always feel like I'm failing, but I don't really fail very often. You know what I mean? So like,
you're a pretty accomplished guy.
So it was actually like a really interesting experience, like to actually like genuinely lose something in a very public manner.
Yeah.
But I didn't want to get high. And, I took the next day, I was like, I'm going to work like nothing happened. And then I was like, oh, no. I'm not going to work. I'm going to lick my wounds.
That's some real gifts of recovery problems. I lost an election.
Yeah, I lost an election. Yeah. It wasn't.
Did dope sick Joseph on the Greyhound bus ever think like I'm going to lose an election one day?
No. Joseph dope sick on the Greyhound bus was worried about not shitting his pants.
Yeah,
and then having to lose his pants. But no, like
valid concern.
I took the day off. I went to the gym. Went and got myself some ramen because that's like a comfort food for me.
So you're coping by eating ramen and
food and exercise and it's weird. Sometimes I hear therapists talk about there's this book called The Body Keeps the Score. And it talks about like how you carry a trauma physically in your body and you experience all your emotions physically. And I'm always like, that's hooey. But like picking up heavy things and making them move really did like help release some stuff for me.
Yeah.
So I feel good. My sponsor was like Joseph. He's like, the election, football season, and baseball season all ended in the same week. Maybe that's the universe telling you.
And
slow down.
You already have, I didn't want to put this in your ear during the campaign. You already have so much on your plate. Holding a public office would have you would have had to stop one of the things. And my fear was it would have been the podcast.
No, the podcast and baseball are my favorite of the things.
Yeah. And spending an unhealthy amount of time at the gym.
Yes. Well, you know what? Speaking of spending an inordinate amount at the gym, an inordinate an inordinate amount of time spending money at the gym, spending an inordinate amount of time at the gym.
How expensive is your gym?
I go to the YMCA. No, let's get to our guest. Our guest today is a fantastic human being, someone who has been a fixture of the recovery community in Austin, Texas for as long as I've been in Austin, Texas. I don't know how many years before that, but I'm assuming several. She's the co-founder of Brightside Sober Living here in Austin, Texas, which are some of the oldest, most reliable sober livings in town. Her and her husband are a recovery power couple for sure. Just a little bit of her story that I know from being around and just shooting the shit at different industry things is she's been through and done some phenomenal things in her recovery. I'm super excited that she agreed to come on our silly little show.
Me too.
So without any further ado, I give you Miss Carrie Smith.
Poof. There she is.
There she is. Carrie Smith, thank you for coming on the show. We're excited to have you.
Yeah, welcome. Nice to meet you.
Thank you.
Yeah. Have you ever seen the show?
I did watch one episode when you sent it to me.
I love that.
Yeah.
I love that. Which one did I send you?
Kyle?
Oh,
okay.
Yeah.
Kyle.
That was the first one in this format, so
Okay.
Yeah.
you didn't get to see the Zoom call version.
Yeah.
So, Carrie, I probably butchered your intro, because I'm like, Carrie, she just, why don't you tell us who you are?
My name's Carrie Smith, and I've been clean and sober since 7/21 of 06.
Wow.
Oh,
Yeah.
Yeah.
And
I think you might be the first guest on the show that's been sober longer than I have. What do you think?
I'll take your word for it.
I think so.
I think our days are exactly a few years.
7/21/08.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah. And then who else? Eric Button.
Eric Button.
Eric Button is also a 7/21.
Oh, wow. You guys
He's
got
been on
an
the show.
exclusive club, yeah.
Yeah.
Eric Button was cool.
Yeah. So we all have the same sober date. That's right.
Chris Gates might have more time than you, right?
Probably.
Yeah.
Yeah.
20 something.
Yeah.
Yeah.
For sure.
We've had at least one.
Okay.
Yeah.
Cool. Well, it's just we have this nurse at Recovery Unplugged Residential who she's got 16 years. And I know for a fact she's the only person on staff that has, but it's weird, right? You get to a certain point when you're like, I've got 16 years.
Yeah.
And you meet someone, that doesn't happen very often.
Well, going to
And it's not like an ego thing. It's just like, you notice it. You know?
Yeah.
Going to meetings in Florida when I had like 3 years clean, I was like the old timer. And then coming to Texas, everybody at the meeting is like 20 plus years. And I'm just like, okay, I'm going to sit down and listen for a while.
He's an NA guy. He does NA.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So that makes sense, man. 3 years. That's
Yeah. That's a long time.
So, Carrie, you must have gotten sober super young.
23.
Wow.
No.
Wow. So
I got started at 23 with like heavy stuff.
Yeah.
So why don't we, let's I don't know a ton about you. I don't know where you're from. I don't know like how you grew up. So why don't we start there? Where did you grow up? What was the I like to talk about the ism before the alcohol a lot, So like what was the first stuff that you saw from when you were growing up that you're like, oh, there was definitely something up with me?
I don't really know. I don't have a whole lot of memories. I know that the brain definitely blocks things out to keep you safe. And so there's not a whole lot of memories that I have from being a childhood, maybe running through the woods. Yeah. And, I grew up like outside of Houston and Brenham, Belleville, and Sealy. Yeah. We moved a lot, so.
Is Brenham, is that where Bluebell is? Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Oh, yeah. Wow.
Yeah.
That's one of my first acknowledgments of how Texans are. I have an uncle. I have a lot of family from the Houston area. Mm-hmm. He came to visit us in Florida one time, and he was looking through the ice cream aisle, and he's like, Jason, I'll tell you what, we have what you call your designer ice creams. And then you have Bluebell. That was with such pride.
Yeah. Bluebell.
It's not my fave.
No? Okay.
You know what? I don't really buy... We buy Bluebell vanilla for like milkshake and like Sunday purposes.
Yeah.
That's about it.
Yeah.
But so how did you grow up? Fairly normal childhood? Everything pretty standard?
I don't think so. Maybe. I don't remember like not being terribly unhappy. I have 3 sisters and a brother, and My parents are still together today. We grew up with not much. You know, we lived in a 2-bedroom trailer with 5 kids and 2 grown-ups, and we had what we needed. You know, food,
So a lot
clothes.
of outside time. Yeah.
Yeah.
Let's just get out.
Please get out of the house. Yeah.
So, okay. So where did things go wrong?
I mean, I had my first drink at 12. My family is like pretty sick, you know, like there's a lot of drinking, and I think my dad like just was never home, and I know he took off a couple times. And
So I have a question, just because I've heard this a few times when people say that you don't really remember much of your childhood.
Yeah.
So at what point do the memories start getting a little more clear and consistent?
probably 13, 14.
You know, my wife's the same way. She's like, I really remember almost nothing from before I was 12.
Wow, that's amazing to me. Like my childhood is very vivid.
Yeah. My husband's the same way.
Yeah.
He can remember being in the crib.
Maybe it's like a guy-girl thing.
No, definitely not. And it's not necessarily. So yes, but I've also met people who, well, at least they don't remember the trauma. So that's a fair
There you go.
argument there. But I've met people who have like siblings, and they're like, no, we had normal childhood, and they'll just be like, I don't remember anything about like grades 3 through 6.
No, I remember all of it.
Yeah, me too.
We should explore this. What's it? So you started drinking at age 12.
I had my first drink. I threw up, and I knew I was going to do it again.
Yeah.
Question.
that moment.
So my first drink was kind of like by myself. Like it wasn't with like a group of buddies, and we're gonna. What was it for? Like, what was the scenario for you?
So this is my first drunk. I know that I had drinks before, because as a child they would, you know, put a little wine cooler in the bottle so the baby would go to sleep, and you know, that kind of stuff. But my first like real drunk was I was staying the night at a friend's house, and we decided to play bartender because our parents were gone, and we just poured a little bit of everything in a glass, and there we went.
Yeah.
So.
And one glass is probably enough. Back
Yeah, I
then.
think it was like this with just like everything in the liquor cabinet.
But you knew immediately that you would do it again. Mm-hmm. Why?
It changed the way I felt.
Yeah.
You know, I do remember like pretending like I was adopted, and I don't know why this person stuck out to me, but Sawyer Brown was my dad, and you know, he was he was gonna come get me one day. So
Sawyer. Okay.
yeah,
Okay.
I know.
So telling stories was kind of part of your escapism too.
Yeah, I do. Probably around 12 started cutting.
Yeah.
You know, just there definitely wasn't. There was some abuse, you know, and so I mean, just trying to get away any way I could.
Right.
Well, and I think that's one of the things that people don't understand a lot about like addiction and alcoholism is like that escapism doesn't necessarily need to come from like, oh, my life sucks so bad, right?
Yeah.
It's just my brain doesn't want to be where I am, like doesn't want to accept who I am, right?
Yeah.
So we make up stories because I was a storyteller as a kid.
Yeah, same here.
Even sober, I mean, like exaggeration and expontification, right? Like if you drank 6 beers every day, I drank 13, and you drank, you know.
We call it hyperbole too, you know.
But yeah, that kind of, it's that when they call it that dis-ease, the disease of dis-ease, you know, just kind of like I'm uncomfortable.
Yeah.
And I could be in a trailer, I could be in a mansion, I could be in a 4-star hotel.
Yeah, I would go to California to stay with my dad, and when I would get out there, and I had a pretty cool childhood, like my parents working in the music business, and you know, living in Miami. I mean, I didn't realize how cool living in Miami was at the time, but you know, I would get there, and I had friends there, and I would just get into these elaborate stories, just complete fantasy, just about like people at school. I would just make up characters and stuff, and just get so into it.
Yeah, because for whatever reason, like our reality is not good enough.
Yeah.
You know. Okay, so there's some cutting, there's some drinking, and at what point? When do you first get to a point where you're like, you know what, like this isn't working so well for me anymore?
The drinking.
Yeah.
I remember I was probably about 20, 21, and I was driving home for Thanksgiving, and I was like, man, a line would be nice right now because I was exhausted.
Yeah.
And then my next thought was like, I wouldn't be going home.
Yeah.
And so I went home and I had Thanksgiving, and then I went and got a line and didn't show up for 6 days.
Oh
Yeah.
man.
So
So what was your life like around that age at 21? Like were you still like kind of on track, like going to college, doing the things you're supposed to do?
I got married at 18, met my ex-husband at 14.
Wait, how old was
which
he?
is we're 18.
Okay.
Which is, now that I think about
Wait, no,
it,
he was
it's
18
like,
and you were 14? Yeah. Oh no, that's weird.
yeah, but back then I thought I was cool, like
Yeah.
my boyfriend's 18 and we go to the pool hall all the time. And it's like, wow, this guy is pretty sick. So,
And so the second you turn 18, you get married?
kind of close. I moved out the day I turned 17.
Yeah.
And that relationship was very physically abusive. And we got married because I thought I could change him. If I get married, he'll know that I love him and this will stop.
He'll settle down. He'll get a good job. I'll stay
The
home
fixer upper.
Yeah.
White picket fences, the whole deal. Yeah. And that didn't happen?
No.
No.
Oh.
No, I started working at a pool hall so that he could get free pool, and I made money.
Yeah.
So
So around 21 is when you first kind of became conscious of, and were you still married at 21?
I was technically married, but he was in prison and we were working on a divorce.
Okay. I mean, that's a good reason to get divorced. Right?
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, it was free, so it was nice.
Yeah. You guys didn't have a huge battle over dividing up the assets.
Like the SUV
the pool
that's broke
stick went
down
to
in
you.
in the driveway. What else do we need?
The Buick. Okay, so 21, you first start to realize, like, hey, like, this isn't.
Yeah, this isn't normal. I didn't. That literally was like the only thing. I not long after I got a DWI, and they made me go to drug and alcohol classes, and they wanted the money, but I never went to an AA meeting. And then I started using about 18, like right after we separated. Ecstasy was like for a year, ecstasy and diet pills.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, we're about the same age. The ecstasy and the fen-phen, was it the fen-phen diet?
Yeah,
pills?
the diet fuel.
Yeah.
Yeah, that still had
That
the
was a
ephedra.
big deal for a while.
Yeah, I never got into that.
I just did heroin.
Legal methamphetamines.
Yeah, it's basically legal meth.
I missed out on so much.
Yeah.
So much cool
No,
stuff.
you got Florida in the heyday of the pill mills.
I did. I got $3 oxys.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah, see, look.
Wow.
Carrie's eyes
Yeah.
got big. She was like, "What?"
Yeah.
yeah.
So drinking. 18 hits. You start to get into the pills and the ecstasy, and then around 21, okay, like I can't control this. I know that if I go get a line, it's over. When do you start thinking about actually doing something about it?
Like basically when I got sober, I tried to commit suicide. And my sister was like, "Hey, you can come live with me, but you have to go to an AA meeting." And I was like, "Well, okay." I didn't have anywhere else to go. And so I went to my first meeting there, and that I guess I didn't really know that it was that big of a deal,
So you
until
didn't
I got
have like a
sober.
bunch of failed attempts at recovery. Yeah,
No, it was like that time I got dry, right? Like I found a sponsor that looked cool and didn't open the book and didn't work one step and went to meetings because my sister was making me.
Yeah.
And then somebody pushed a drink my way.
Yeah.
A guy, that's also one of my addictions. They changed the way I feel. So, if I went from this one to this one to this one, it's always somebody to take care of me.
Yeah.
So, because it's true, right? It is just another way to change the way you feel, right? Like, if this person treats me like I'm valid and special and important, then I must be, right? Because I don't know how to do that for myself.
Exactly.
And once that feeling wears off, there's somebody else who's gonna, change the way that feels, and just a constant no roots is kind of where you were at, right? Like you didn't feel secure anywhere. So just keep moving from one situation to the next.
Correct.
And so you kind of glossed over it, and if you don't want to go into detail with it, like that's just fine. But like I'd like to hear more about what was going on in your life when you were feeling like the only escape was going to be suicide.
I mean, I was drinking all the time. I worked in bars all the time. I am bipolar, right? And so it was like I had been drinking from the time I woke up, and then something was said and the snap happened and I was done.
Yeah.
Which is, I mean, that's happened to me in sobriety. Everything was wonderful. Like nothing was going on. And all of a sudden it was like, I don't want to do this anymore. Do what? Like my life is amazing.
Yeah.
So it just happened like that.
Yeah. So it was like a very impulsive, like my mental health kicked in and I was, okay.
So it comes up a lot on the podcast, people working in industries like working at a bar or working in restaurants or tattoo shops where you can get fucked up at work.
Yeah.
And as long as you're taking care of exactly what you need to take care of, nobody's going to call you out on it.
Correct.
And in some places, it's even more of an asset, because I know a lot of bars that I would go to or worked at, the customers would come in and want me to get as fucked up as possible and like have somebody to party with. And it's really hard to get out of that cycle, especially if you're making enough money to keep your habits going and have a little bit extra.
Yep.
And like I remember I was working at this one place and I would pick up shifts if I couldn't find anything because I know if I went to work I could find something, so it's really tough to get out of that cycle.
Yeah. That industry.
Which is exactly why I worked. And
yes.
like you can't drink until afternoon, and it was like as soon as noon.
Noon, that's a pretty low bar too.
In the restaurant industry, it's kind of like, what is your addiction? Not like art, you know what I mean? So like the alcoholics are kind of like the low level, and then you got, and then there's like a fair amount of coke heads that are kind of the middle class.
Yeah.
And then you got your dope fiends who are at the top.
And then you usually got at least one person in the kitchen who's supplying everybody.
Oh, yeah. So this is how old I am. Back in my day, the kitchen always had a guy that sold weed, a guy that sold coke, and a guy that sold pirated DVDs.
That's fair.
You have a little list. You'd have a little printed out list of like, this is what I got.
It was VHS tapes when I was working there.
Okay.
I'm just kidding. But
probably was.
Yeah, well, I mean, okay. Anyway.
Okay, so you first, your sister kind of pushes you into the rooms.
Yeah.
And you're in there, you're hanging out, you're not working a program, right? You're not taking any kind of spiritual action.
Yeah.
Get drunk.
Yeah.
And then,
I mean, literally it was like that day. So I started dating this guy and I was like, man, a Coors Light sounds nice. Didn't drink that day. The next day I show up at his work and he's like, ta-da.
Coors Light, where did this come from?
Yeah. And I'm like, what are you doing? I'm an alcoholic. And he was like, but you haven't had a drink in like 3 months. You're fine, right?
Yeah.
You know what? I am fine.
You're right. This guy, I like the way you think, sir.
Yeah. But, a lot of people, because I have friends who helped me find my way into the rooms, who I didn't know what being in recovery was. When they told me that they went to meetings, I thought it was something that was like court mandated. And, I didn't understand that like a 12-step thing was a continuous process. I thought maybe there's some graduation date and then you're a normal person and you could have some drinks. So if somebody doesn't know, it doesn't necessarily make them a bad person for trying to be like, oh, you said you wanted a drink. Here's a drink. You know?
Yeah. And for our listeners at home, right? Like just going to meetings is not working a program. That's just showing up, and that's where you show up to like talk about the work.
And then you meet the people
do the work.
who are doing it, and then you find out how they did it and hopefully have some interest in, asking them to help.
Yeah.
Did your sister have any experience in the rooms or just knew that AA was a place that maybe you might be able to get a little bit of help?
Her husband.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. So this winner of a guy. All the Coors Light.
Yeah. It was like from that moment, there was no, I'll just have a couple today. I literally finished the case, went to the bar. That one closed at midnight, went to the one that closed at 2. And within a few days I was using again. And then within a week I packed up my apartment that I had, somehow managed to get in 3 months of sobriety. and had somebody come and pack it up and drive me back to Austin.
Yeah.
So,
And a lot of people also don't realize that, right? That, no matter how far along you are in recovery, right? You at 16 years, like if you were to start drinking again right now, like everything that got built up would be gone pretty fast.
yeah.
Yeah, we've talked about that before where Joseph thinks he could do
I think like
4 weeks.
Yeah, like a month.
About
I think I
4
could go
weeks
about a
before running
month.
shit in the ground. I would be probably like 2 weeks.
Yeah. My husband would cut all the credit cards off and I would disappear because the only people, not the only, I do have some friends outside of recovery, but I mean, 95% of my friends are in recovery.
Yeah.
Yeah. So nobody would.
So you would only have a couple of days.
Yeah. Yeah.
Not worth it.
No,
Not at all. So right back, you're in the life, you're back in Austin, Texas, doing the deal. How long do you stay out?
30 days.
30 days, and then you were like, I'm done.
Yeah. Another suicide attempt.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So you come back, you get back into the rooms.
Mm-hmm.
So what's different at that time?
So when I came in this time, like I know about AA. This guy that I had dated, for 5 years before I got sober, I called him and I was like, what do I do? And he told me to get on Hill Country Intergroup.
Mm-hmm.
And so I found it was like an 11:30 p.m. meeting,
At
candlelight.
Westlake?
No, it was at 4 Points.
Okay. Yeah,
Back when it was in the Howard Johnson.
Yeah.
Yeah. And like all the way in the back. So and I showed up and I don't really remember that meeting. I remember crying and it being a dark room and there was like, 4 guys there that were, probably 50 and up, maybe a little younger, but at 23 that they seemed older.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. So
And then, but what was different about what was going on outside the rooms? Like you went to meetings, we established that doesn't keep you sober. So like, what did you start doing? What did the action look like for you?
So a sponsor, a woman in recovery showed up at a meeting that she had never gone to. Like she had been to 4 Points, but it wasn't her meeting. Right. And so I tell people like, it felt like God like picked her up where she was at and sat her in the meeting. And then she was just like, what are you willing to do? Yeah. And I was like, tell me, I don't know what to do. I've never really done this. And so she's like, well, I want you to call Austin Recovery in the morning and see if they have a bed for you. And so I got up the next day and I called and nobody answered and nobody called me back. And she was like, I called her and she's like, okay, I want you to pack a bag and I want you to be up there at 7 a.m. And I was like, okay.
And this is the old campus up here.
Yeah, on Cross Park.
Yeah, Cross Park.
Yeah. So
That's an amazing thing about sponsorship and 12-step programs that, somebody who doesn't know isn't going to know. It's like you find somebody that has something that you want, whether it's some inner peace, whether it's financial security, whatever it is, and you go to this person, and it's a difficult thing to go to this person like, hey, is it cool if I call you like every day for the rest of my life? And, it's a hard thing to approach somebody to, but a good sponsor-sponsee relationship is somebody just saying like, all this confusion in your life, give it to me.
yeah.
And I'm going to help you sort it out.
Yeah.
And it's like when that happens, when God just puts somebody in a room that you would never probably relate to on the streets and in your everyday life, but somehow this person just listens to you, hears you, and, just helps you out with every little thing that you need help with. And even if you don't like what they're saying, you trust them.
Yeah.
And that's the beauty on how that whole thing works.
I don't like it, but I know you're right.
Yeah.
And without, I think for the first time, a relationship almost unconditional, like she's doing it to help me, to help her.
Right.
Without needing or wanting something from me.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And that's something, I saw a TikTok the other day that was talking about how, especially for guys, right? Like the only unconditional love a guy ever experiences is like from his mom. Because in the rest of your life, right, traditionally, like you're expected to produce, perform, achieve, and that's how men.
Competition.
But, as you're talking about it, it occurs to me, right, like also with your sponsor. Like your sponsor, they don't even, you don't even necessarily need to stay sober for them to still like love you and try to take care of you.
Right.
Yeah, absolutely.
So she packs you up and we're going to Austin Recovery.
Yeah.
Shout out to Austin Recovery. Rest in peace.
I know.
It still bothers me. Yeah. And you just do the 30-day, the 90-day? What'd you do?
28 days.
Yeah.
State funded. I showed up and they came and did the little interview, and I truly believe that this is why she let me in that day. I had a bandage on my wrist because I had slit my wrist. Mm-hmm. And she's like, what is that? I was like, oh, I cut my wrist, but it's not that bad. And she's like, what do you mean? And I was like, well, I didn't get very deep. And she's like, okay, I'll be right back. And came in and was like, let's go.
She
and I was like,
back and she was like, yo, we got to get this girl in.
She needs help.
Yeah.
I'll help her. Yeah.
And what were you like as a client? Were you like the clients like with your notepad and your pen like on time?
No, I was such a brat for somebody being in their state funded. I was like, I can't drink soda. I need orange juice and water. And like all of a sudden I'm taking care of myself, That's
one of my favorite archetypes in treatment.
Oh, yeah.
My sponsor tried to get a Coke machine put into the state-funded rehab. Said that he'd pay for it and everything because he didn't want to drink the Pepsi that they had provided.
Oh.
Yeah.
Okay, so you were kind of a pain as a client.
Yeah. So like 4 or 5 days in, out smoking cigarettes, I was done. I didn't need this. It's not that big of a deal. Like
I
know what I need to do.
Yeah. Or not just like, I don't need this. Right. Yeah. Like maybe I'm not really that bad.
Y'all are way more fucked up.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And then there was a girl there that was like 2 weeks in.
Yeah.
And I was like, man, how'd you do it? Like you seem so put together, and she sat with me and smoked cigarettes with me and I stayed, and I finally like settled down.
Yeah.
So this is another thing that people, if you don't know, you don't know.
Yeah.
Somebody like when I go and do H&I commitments, which is bringing a meeting into a hospital institution, somewhere where people can't get out to go to a meeting. And I went to treatment 20 times. So I understand somebody with 6 years, that 6 years is completely unfathomable to a person who's sitting there dope sick or going through whatever they're going through. It's the person who has 24 hours more than them or 1 week more than them or 1 month more than them. That really helps. Like to see somebody who you might have known from the streets or somebody who is as sick as you, who just did it for one more day, gives you that little bit of hope.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, if you had walked into a treatment center I was at and said, I have 6 years, or maybe even I think like 2 or 3 was just like, you're so different from me.
Yeah.
Like I remember we had an H&I one time where the guy came in and talked about losing the keys to his car. And it was like, motherfucker, you got a car? Like, what? I don't identify with that.
Yeah.
And I mean, he was a good guy. Like he was, anyway.
Yeah.
So you get out, and so do you go to sober living after treatment?
Not immediately. My mom came and got me, and I remember getting in the car and just hearing her and my sister kind of bicker back and forth. Yeah. And I was like, man, I need a drink like right now. And
take me back to rehab, please.
Yeah. And so I went home for a couple weeks to my parents' house, and it was difficult, to say the least. My dad is very stubborn, and I don't have a vehicle, and so I'm trying to get to meetings, and he's like, I don't care. So my sponsor for that 2 weeks, I have to tell this story. Okay, so she every day would have a meeting with me, right? Uh-huh. So one of those days I'd gotten off the phone and I was sitting there talking to my mom about sober living, and my dad was going to go play golf with my old high school counselor. And he's like hearing us talk about like, I need this much money to get into sober living. But again, like my parents didn't have anything, so he walked outside and he came back in and he was like, hey, my brother just gave me $300 to give to the church. And he said, I can give it to you. And so that $300 got me into an Oxford house, and I got to, Yeah. University Hills.
God, those little pieces that just come together when you're just putting your, when you're putting your faith that things are going to work out.
Yeah.
I thought you were going to say he's going to be like, you know what? But fuck the church. Let's cut out the middleman.
Yeah.
I'm sure it did way more good going to get you into treatment than
So one of the things we talk about fairly often is like just not drinking doesn't mean you're in recovery, right? Like you mentioned being dry earlier, so at what point in your recovery do you feel like you really kind of made that step from like someone who is trying not to drink to someone who is like successfully living life or trying to build something bigger?
2 years sober. I was kind of a mess. Like my first 2 years, I stayed in sober living for about 9 months. Mm-hmm. I was working at Pizza Patron, just $7.25 an hour.
But you could eat there, right?
Yeah.
That's huge.
I made pizzas and pretty much lived off of that for a while. And then I twice in the first 2 years of my recovery tried to go back to Houston to go be with the guy I was with before. Not the one that gave me the Coors Light, but the one I was with for 5 years.
The guy you were with for 5 years.
Not even, it was actually that guy's best friend.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. Yeah. It's, addiction, right?
Yeah.
So, but I went back a couple times. The second time I was about 18 months sober. And I went back for a couple months, but the second time I almost used.
Yeah.
I had his daughter
and
and
to Austin.
Yeah.
How close were you to using?
Like I told him to get back because I wanted to get messed up.
Oh.
He'd been gone for 4 days, right? I'm sober and I have his kid, right? And so I took her back to her mom and I was like, just get over here. And he said, call your sponsor, and hung up on me.
Yeah. So you don't want to deal with it. Yeah.
Yeah. This guy right here. And so I called my sponsor and was back in
Your sponsor
Austin.
said, get out of Houston,
Please
Texas.
leave. Yeah. It wasn't, that's where I did all my using at, and so it wasn't, I didn't really know anybody.
Yeah.
So
So around 2 years, you feel like things start to change.
Yeah.
What starts to change at that point?
I'm actually working the steps on a consistent basis. My sponsor told me at the time, like, your life is kind of okay right now, right? And I was like, yeah. And she's like, could you imagine if you did a few things I told you to do, like what it would actually look like? And that was kind of like, man, she's right, and so that's started, working with other women and becoming a productive member of society.
Yeah.
Do you remember your first experience sponsoring somebody?
I was so scared. She was like 20 years older than me. And I was like, what do I have that this woman wants? And my sponsor, like, it was just like this sense of peace, right? And I think I'd gotten to that place where it was like, I was just okay with me.
Yeah.
Like, regardless of anything else, I was okay.
Yeah.
So
we've talked a little bit about your mental health, right? Mm-hmm. And that's one thing that people that I know in recovery who have mental health issues, like that's something that, you get to a point where like with the alcohol and drugs, at least for me, like that's not the issue anymore. Like I kind of, the habits and things I need to do to keep that in check are pretty ingrained.
Yeah.
But the mental health is the piece where it's like, you got to stay on your toes. So like, has that created any challenges for you in recovery?
I think so. I guess I didn't really know that I was bipolar until I was like 5 years sober. Mm-hmm. And I'd always been, had highs and lows and didn't really know what they were about. Even, when I was younger, my dad would say that my BB was stuck, right? Mm-hmm. Like I'd just, get crazy and he'd be like, you're acting nuts. So, but I didn't know what it was. Yeah. Right. And then about 5 years sober, I went through losing my hair. Mm-hmm. I have alopecia, and it went from like I had a spot, which I didn't even know because my hair was so long and thick, to literally not a hair on my body. Mm-hmm. And so I got, the depression kicked in, and so they put me on antidepressants. People thought I was on drugs, that I was so just like just all the time, like, just crazy, just lots of energy.
So what do you do today to like manage that? Is it medication? Is it other things?
Exercise.
Yeah. So I went through a period of like being on medication. Excuse me. And then probably about 4.5, almost 5 years ago, I was just still like not wanting to get out of bed, the depression, on medication. But we have this little girl that comes into our life. She's, at the time she came in about 16 months sober, or 16 months old. And I just didn't want to play. And it's just, she'd want to do something. I'd be like, let's watch a movie, and so it kind of kicked off. My best friend started a health journey, right? She started losing weight and feeling better. And I was like, okay, I need to do something different. Yeah. If not for me, for this, she was 5 at the time. Yeah. And so I started my journey then. I cut out sugar completely, and autoimmune protocol diet, lost about 50 pounds, and then didn't have any muscle. It was like,
you're like, I'm just skinny.
Yeah, just skinny. And so I started working out, and so clean eating most of the time, and no sugar all the time, and then exercise. Yeah. Right. So
you're no sugar in your diet at all still?
Today I do.
Okay.
Yeah.
But so I think one thing that's really interesting to me is like, the mind, body, spirit, like it's built into 12-step programming, right? Like it's mind, body, spirit. Yeah. But we focus so much on like the body part. It's just don't put drugs in your body.
Yeah.
But I think more and more like that's starting to change to where I know a lot of folks who, they look at their diet and they look at how, because what you put in your body impacts the way you feel.
Yeah.
Right. And, I think within reason, right? Like I like to treat myself.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But I know I feel better when aside from just like losing weight, like what did you see emotionally change in you from when you started?
Everything. I mean, I was actually happy. I felt like I had a purpose again. Yeah. I wanted to go outside. I like up until like the alopecia kicked in, I was pretty active most of the time. Mm-hmm. And then once that happened, it was like super depressing, and it just continued to go down. And so once I started going back up again, I wanted to go hang out with the women again. And because that's like, I think that's what saves me most of the time, God.
Being around women in recovery.
Yeah.
And now you went so far as to you did a bodybuilding competition. Is that the right word for that?
Yeah.
Yeah. Which like I no.
Yeah.
But like the amount of discipline and work to go into doing something like that, like that's wild. What was that like for you? Like what made you want to do that?
So, getting into like fitness, right? I hired a trainer because I had back issues that I would throw my back out every 3 to 4 months. And so he kind of took me from, just losing the weight and being thin to having some muscle, and then going on this whitewater rafting trip, right? And they tumped the boat over and I couldn't get back in. That was really like the start of getting more fit. Mm-hmm. Like I am not going to be hanging off the side of a cliff and not be able to save myself. Yeah. So I started working out to get a pull up. And while I was at the gym, I saw this girl like posing. And so I just YouTube posing and just went down this bodybuilding rabbit hole. Yeah. And I'm a drug addict, right? And
right.
So yes. I went all the way in.
Oh. Was it ever unhealthy? Did you ever go a little bit too far? And
I mean,
yeah, because dope fiends will make anything sick.
I actually am in prep right now to do a show in April, just a different division, right? And so maybe it's unhealthy. I mean, you like getting down to that body fat percentage is not healthy, but coming out of it, I thought I would be harder on myself, like putting on the weight. But
like, where did my abs go?
Exactly. Yeah. Cause mine disappeared pretty quickly.
Yeah. Never seen mine.
Yeah. I didn't even think I had any for a while. So it was like 2 weeks out from my show. I was like, oh, there they are. Yeah. So I don't think unhealthy.
You got a healthy balance with it.
Yeah.
That's good. That's recovery stuff there. Like not taking,
Yeah.
because I know a lot of people who, they get clean and sober. Fitness becomes this thing, and then it just becomes a sickness almost.
Yeah.
Like it's just way too much.
Yeah, I mean, I can't tell you how many guys I've known that go out and relapse, and part of the beginning of that is they get on like testosterone and steroids and start cycling all these things. And I know for me, like for me, the first fitness thing that ever happened was probably like at 8 years sober. One day Chelsea was like, I'm going to go on a run. And we were not running people. And she went for a run. She ran a mile and she came back. She was like, all right, it took 14 minutes or something. And I was like, well, you know what? Fuck you. I'm going to go on a run and I'm going to run faster than you.
Yeah.
And I ran like a 10-minute mile.
Ooh.
And I'm on the floor dying afterwards, but I beat her.
But you won. Yeah.
Yes, I won.
Yeah.
And it was like, well, I'm going to do a 5K. And so like probably 6 weeks later, I ran my first 5K.
Yeah.
And then the day after I did the 5K, I signed up for a 10K. And then, so on and so forth until like within a year of that first run, I did the San Antonio Rock and Roll Marathon. And then I was like, okay, I'm done.
Yeah.
No more of that. No, but that's super awesome. Like, just like, from being, like we were talking about with Jason, with being able to travel now, right? Like from being someone completely unreliable, like your family's shipping you around, like you need your sister to come, you know what I mean? To being someone who has that kind of discipline to, set a goal, have a program on how you're going to get to that goal and actually stick to it is massive. On top of everything else you do.
Yeah.
How are we doing on time? Oh, we're getting close to that time. Do you want to just do it? Yeah. Yeah. Okay. All right. It is rapid fire question time. Pew, 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 pew.
It's rapid fire question time.
Okay, I got the first question. What is your favorite lift?
Probably the front squat, not because I love it, but because of the changes I've seen.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm not a fan. I did it yesterday, though.
Yeah.
It feels hard.
That's, yeah.
What is your most irrational fear? So, for instance, mine is being possessed by the devil, still to this day, from when I was a kid.
I think, I don't know. The only thing I can think of is getting high.
That's rational. But,
Yeah.
Like,
but we'll accept it.
yeah, I mean, just because I know I do mostly what I need to do, right? And so if I'm doing everything I need to do, then is it rational to think that I would get high?
Oh, fuck. Turned it around on me.
She just Yoda'd you, man. All right. Ben and Jerry's calls you. They want to make a flavor of ice cream for you, but you've only got 30 seconds to come up with what goes in it and the name of it.
Caramel, fudge,
Yes.
vanilla,
Yes.
and the name of it would be Psycho Killer.
Oh.
That's what I call my dog.
Yeah.
Yeah, she's a little crazy.
All right. Biggest guilty pleasure when it comes to music?
Probably Jack Johnson.
Oh, yeah. That's pretty guilty.
Yeah. Don't tell people that. I'm just kidding. No, all music is valid.
Yeah.
All right. We have completely destroyed the planet and we're having to move to Mars.
Okay.
It is a 9-month journey in a capsule. And you have to pick one person to go with you on that 9-month journey. Basically, who do you want to hang out with for 9 months straight?
Oh, I mean, my husband, for sure. But I also have Lily.
We'll let you take both.
She'll make it. She'll
Yeah,
get there.
she's going to get there, but I have
yeah.
to stay with, I'd probably Scott.
Yeah.
Yeah, for sure.
That's nice.
Shout out Scott Smith.
Yeah.
All right. Well, that's kind of, the end of our time here together. But we do like to give our guests an opportunity before we wrap up to, tell us about whatever you want to tell us about. If you got something you want to plug, I don't know, sober livings. I'm sure Scott has ideas on what you should plug. So
He totally forgot I was coming here today. He's like, "What are you doing today?" I was like, "I'm going to do the podcast." He's like, "Oh yeah, okay." So, Brightside Sober Living, affordable sober living in Austin.
one of the last affordable sober livings in Austin.
Yeah, $6.90 a month. But I didn't have anything when I came in, and so that is why we do our very best to keep it as low as we possibly can.
Yeah.
So, and then Ascension House here in
House.
Austin.
What's
Men
the
and
difference
Women's.
between Brightside and Ascension House?
So Brightside is moderate structure, high accountability. Ascension House is high structure, high accountability. We have a launchpad program that they can, when insurance isn't going to pay for a day relapse, this is something that you can do instead of it. Yeah. And then Extra Mile out in Mississippi, Men and Women's.
As they say in the rooms, some are sicker than others. And however sick you are, Scott and Carrie got something for you.
Yeah.
Right? Sober living, great.
Yeah.
Structure, great.
Yeah.
Rehab,
Yeah.
you're going to Mississippi.
You're going to the country.
Nice.
Yeah.
And then just, if you have any kind of last parting thoughts, any final message that you'd like to share with our dozens and dozens of viewers, now's your chance.
Trust God, clean house, and help others. Yeah. Me and Lily have this thing, and it's like, yesterday's gone, tomorrow never comes. All we have is today.
And today is a gift.
meditation.
And
Yeah.
that's why we call it the present.
Yeah.
Aw,
Oh. My mom told me that one time, and
I like it.
I didn't have the heart to tell her, like, I've heard that. Like,
Yeah. Okay, Mom.
Hey, Mom. Shout out to all the moms out there. Anyway, as we like to say here, oh, wait, no. Thank you again
You're
for
welcome.
being
Thank
here,
you.
for taking time out of your day to come talk to us and share your story with the internet. And as we like to say here on Talksicology, there's 1,000 ways in.
And 1,000 ways out.
And we hope you find
Your ice cream.
God damn it. Oh, we don't even do that music anymore. All right.